Tansi, Okimau, Piisim, Nitisi Mikason. Welcome. My name is Director DeWolf. Thank you for being here. I was welcoming you in my traditional Cree language. I am now calling the June 10th, 2020 regular board meeting to order at 1 p.m. We live and go to school in a city that is the ancestral homeland to the Duwamish people, the Muckleshoot Nation, and the Suquamish Nation. We acknowledge them as custodians of this land since time immemorial. As guests, and in many of our cases, as settlers on this land, we extend our deepest gratitude and respect to their ancestors and elders, past, present, and future. Ms. Wilson-Jones, roll call, please.
Director Hampson. Director Hampson.
Apologies, I'm here. I just didn't get back to the screen. I'm here.
Thank you. Director Harris.
Present.
Director Hersey.
Here.
Director Mack.
Here.
Director Rankin.
Here.
Director Rivera-Smith.
This is Greg Narver. I just spoke with Director Rivera-Smith. She's likely to be a couple minutes late for this meeting. She's tending to something else.
Thank you. Director DeWolf.
Present. Okay. Superintendent Junot is also joining us for today's meeting, and additional staff will be briefing the board as we move through today's agenda. This meeting is being held remotely per the Governor's Proclamation 28.4, prohibiting meetings such as this one from being held in person. And I'll note that members of the public may also be joining via via phone or online streaming. I will not be asking members of the public to identify themselves today, but thank you to those joining us. As stated on the agenda, there will not be a public comment opportunity today per the board's March 11th, 2020 vote to waive relevant provisions of Board Policy 1430 and Board Procedure 1430 BP, as well as Board Resolution 2019/20-29 via email to the board, by fax, and by mail as stated on the agenda. And directors were sent an email with those comments from Ms. Laughlin. To facilitate today's meeting, I will ask all participants to ensure you are muted when you're not speaking. Staff may be muting participants to address feedback and ensure we can hear directors and staff. Now we are going to do a little bit of interesting choreography. We are going to move into executive session. So folks that logged onto this specific Teams call, I'm going to ask you to hang up this call and move over to our executive session Teams call. And here we go. The board is now immediately recessing the regular board meeting into executive.
Director Mack.
Director Mack, Director Harris,
Present.
and I think we're waiting for Director Rivera Smith. Okay, Director Rivera Smith is here, and Director Rankin. She's logging in over here. Okay, we'll let Director Rankin pop over momentarily. I will now turn it over to Superintendent Junot for her comments.
Thank you, President DeWolf. I'm actually going to waive comments today for the sake of time.
Thank you to Superintendent Junot. Apologies about that. We have now reached the consent portion of today's agenda. May I have a motion for the consent agenda, please? Director Harris, Director Hampson, you may
Apologies, I
unmute.
move approval of the consent agenda. This is Director Hampson.
Second, Director Harris.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Hampson, for moving, and Director Harris for seconding. Do directors have any items they would like to remove from the consent agenda?
I have a point of clarification for Chief Counsel Narver, please.
Okay.
May I abstain from approving the consent agenda?
Yes,
This is Director Harris.
yes, you
Thank
can be on record as abstaining, correct?
And that will come in the next portion when we vote. Thank you. So if there are no items that directors want to move off of the consent agenda and approve of the consent agenda, please signify now by saying aye.
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 Director Harris abstains.
I haven't gotten there yet. One moment. For those directors who abstain
Director Harris abstains.
and any noes. Thank you. This motion passes. Thank you, directors. We are now a little bit behind time, but we will move to the action item on today's agenda. As we move through these items and later the introduction items, I will first call on committee chairs, and then I'll call on the remaining directors alphabetically for questions and comments. So now we are to action item number 1. This is resolution 2019/20-28, affirming inclusion of our LGBTQ students, staff, and community. May I have a motion for this item, please?
I move that the school board approve resolution 2019/20-28, affirming inclusion of LGBTQIA+ students, staff, and community in Seattle Public Schools.
May I have a second?
Second the motion.
Thank you, directors. This item has been moved by Director Hampson and seconded by Director Harris. We will now move to directors for any comments or questions before we vote. And I will start with myself, that feels weird, as the sponsor of this resolution. So I just wanted to give a quick background and then jump into questions and comments from directors. I have been working on this with students and community since probably end of last fall. Brought this forward for collaboration with the district, with Directors Mack and Directors Rankin on some policy conversations, as Chief Podesta, Chief DeBacker, and legal counsel Ron Boy, as well as Lisa Love, who is our health program manager. And I really appreciated being able to work with them and create this resolution. First, doing an assessment of buildings that have space available for gender neutral restrooms, as well as requiring all new construction to include at minimum one multi-stall gender neutral restroom. In addition, there is a portion about the adoption of instructional materials must explicitly include LGBTQ folks, significant events, contributions, as well as kickstarting and initiating a process for looking at an LGBTQ studies high school course, and happy to answer any other questions. One thing I did want to add is I would like to propose an amendment, Greg, and I'm not sure if this is the correct moment to do it, but it's just a small amendment on some of the wording. I got feedback from community. Would this be the time to do it? Okay, maybe Craig jumped off. Well, I would like to propose an amendment that all references to LGBTQIA+ in the resolution be changed to LGBTQIA+, parentheses, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, ally, end parentheses, to make sure that our community and folks understand what that acronym means.
I would amend my motion.
I think
to
you can just
include-
second that, Chandra, and then we can.
Okay,
vote
I'll
on the
second
amendment.
that amendment.
Does anybody have any comments or concerns about that?
No, I think that's a great suggestion. Just to not
thank you
assume that everybody understands what that is probably wise.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Director DeWolf, I can call roll on that. I believe we would do
Sure.
this by roll call.
Thank you. That would be great. Sorry.
Sorry to jump in.
No, that's great.
Um,
Thank you.
So Director Hersey,
Aye.
Director Mack,
Aye.
Director Rankin,
Aye.
Director Rivera-Smith,
Aye.
Director Hampson,
Aye.
Director Harris,
Aye.
Director DeWolf.
Aye.
The motion with the amendment has passed unanimously.
Thank you. So we've just voted on the amendment. Now the first motion is back in our conversation. So the only other thing I want to say is I'm really excited. I heard from students and also collaborated with the NAACP Youth Council on this resolution, and I'm so grateful that I was able to connect with them and really get their feedback about this. So I'm really excited to, obviously share this. Hopefully we can pass this today and share this great news. Particularly during Pride Month, I did not expect us to wait this long to talk about this. I thought we'd be talking about it in March. So it's beautifully poetic, I guess, that it's happening here in Pride Month. So I'm going to turn it over to directors for any comments, questions, or concerns before we move to the roll call vote, starting with Director Hampson.
No questions from me. Just a gratitude for the work that went into this and for support of our LGBTQIA+ students, staff, and community.
Thank you, Director Hampson. Director Harris.
First of all, nice work, President DeWolf, and nice work by staff. And do we have the gay pride and transgender flags on our flagpole yet? And if not, can we go down and roll them up?
I'm happy to report they were rolled up, raised up on June 1st.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're in the midst of our pandemic. We couldn't go celebrate, but that is currently up. Yes.
In any event, thank you ever so much.
I appreciate you. Thanks, Director Harris. Director Hersey.
Go ahead, Greg.
I'm sorry, I was having an offline conversation for a minute, and I'm informed there was a question for me. I'm sorry to have been away for a second.
We resolved it, and Ellie jumped in for support, so I appreciate you.
I apologize for being absent for a minute.
No worries. You're busy. Director Hersey.
No questions.
Thank you, Director Hersey. Director Mack.
I'm very excited about this resolution and making the statement, and grateful for the work and moving it forward. Look forward to the operation side of the work as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Director Mack. You've been really great to work with. I appreciate your support, and I think we'll actually be talking about one of the policies that we implicate in this resolution 6900 today, or at least on the 24th. So looking forward to that.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Director Rankin.
Yeah, I am also in agreement with comments before, and I read part of an email from a parent yesterday in Curriculum Instruction Committee, and I would like to just restate something that this parent said. In this time of injustice and pain and violence, the steps being taken by the board and the superintendent to make our schools more decent, more fair, more inclusive, more just, more safe, more affirming are a beacon of light and hope and promise. As a parent of a transgender child who gets to thrive, who gets to love, who gets to be, and is celebrated because of these efforts, my heart is so full. And my heart is even more full to know that every child who will follow will have paths, supports, resources, tools, and safe toilets to make it all easier. And they also specially noted thank you to Lisa Love for her work and staying alongside families and for working so hard and continuing to move us in this direction. So I just wanted to have that be on the public record about resolutions can seem so like procedural and dry, but how much of an impact it makes and how everything that we do is guided by these policies and resolutions. And I just wanted to thank everybody for their work on this and just read that into the record for us all to take a moment and recognize the impact that this really has.
Thank you, Director Rankin. Wow, that's really great to hear that note. Thank you. Director Rivera-Smith.
No questions, full support and full appreciation for the work that's gone into this. So happy that our students are going to benefit all students, not just ones this refers to, but all students are going to benefit from it. So thank you.
Thanks, Director Rivera-Smith. And I'll just finish by saying, I'm really excited. Hopefully we'll pass this today and to be able to let the MENE students know and NAACP students know that helped work on this, that their support and their input and their voice and their perspective are part of this resolution. So it's just as much theirs as the districts. And so I appreciate them and I'm excited to be able to share the news. So with that, I would love to kick us off into roll call and hopefully be able to celebrate some really good news during Pride Month. So Ms. Wilson-Jones, I'll kick it over to you.
And can I just get a clarification from Greg on an amendment passed? Do we need a new motion on the underlying resolution as amended?
Yes, there should be correct. There should be a motion to approve the resolution as amended.
Oh, you're right. Thank you. Go ahead, Director Hampton.
Oh, I move to approve the resolution as amended.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Director Hampson, seconded by Director Harris. I will let Ms. Wilson-Jones take the roll call from here.
Director Mack?
Aye.
Director Rankin?
Aye, and with gratitude.
Director Rivera-Smith?
Aye.
Hampson?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Emphatically aye.
Director Hersey?
Aye.
Director DeWolf?
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you all. Okay. We'll now move to action item number 2, approval of the operations data dashboard. This came through executive committee on March 20th for consideration. May I have a motion for this item, please? Director Hampson, maybe.
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot to press the mute button. I move the school board approve the operations data dashboard as attached to the board action report.
Second the motion.
This item has been moved by Director Hampson and seconded by Director Harris. This item has also been updated since introduction. Senior Advisor to the Superintendent Sherry Cox, could you please provide us on that update quickly? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Director DeWolf. Very quickly, it's the addition or change to the bar is on page 4. And excuse me while my computer is temporarily frozen. It's on page 4 of the bar, and the language added reflects some of the director's requests that while a limited number of key measures were selected for the operations data dashboard, each division monitors multiple key performance indicators to guide its work. Divisions' additional measures will be discussed at oversight work sessions and, if applicable, during future superintendent evaluation. And that was the only change to the bar itself. I do have some information regarding the questions that Director Hampson and Directors Rankin asked regarding how did each of these move the needle in student outcome data? And I'm happy to address that, or I'm also happy to put that in a Friday memo if it's more applicable.
I will go through directors, and Director Hampson and Rankin can let you know as we move through them. So let me start with directors for comments and questions before we move to that vote. And as Executive Committee Chair, I will start this out, but I appreciate the update. Thank you very much. And I will pass it on to Director Hampson.
Yes, and if you could, I'll make that be my question. And let you provide those updates.
Sure. And so I don't have an update, Director Hampson, for each of the performance indicators, but I do have for 3 different indicators based on what the research team was able to gather in the short turnaround time. And in John Hattie's book, Visible Learning, he does note that for regarding the teacher on the first day of class, as I think all of us are very well aware, that the teacher-student relationship and the overall quality of the teacher are 2 indicators very highly tied to student performance data. And so we believe that by having that classroom teacher in the classroom on the first day, it kicks off to start that teacher-student relationship, hopefully on a positive foot. And also, while our subs are high quality, we know that the teacher quality is higher when we have somebody that is going to remain in that classroom. Regarding the school bus and on-time performance, research has shown that students who start the school day on time do better than students who are late to school. Additionally, late students disrupt the learning of other students in the class, and students who have more classmates who are more often do worse in school than students whose classmates are more often on time. And that's from a study by Gottfried in 2014. And then another study from 2017 by the same researcher says that studies have shown that students who take the bus to school are less likely to be absent than students who use other forms of transportation to get to school. So that is directly tied then to that on-time school bus performance. And then the school lunch performance. There's evidence that school lunches are more nutritious than home-packed lunches for students, according to a 2016 and a 2014 study, and that school food policies can improve student diets. That's from a 2018 study. And then recent research has also shown that school lunch participation improves academic outcomes for students, and that is from a 2020 study. And I'm happy to drop the studies into a Friday memo so you can all refer back should you be interested in reading more about those. And those are the 3 Director Hampson that we could find in the short time given to us.
Well, other than being offended as somebody who prepares lunch, I would just say that I think as a note for when we do report this, the KPI around the teacher in the classroom the first day of school, that we want to make sure that we look at the impact of that same teacher not being there on the first day of school in November, when we have historically had shifts. So just a note that I think that does assume that you have the teachers there and then they stay there, which is something that we continue to be challenged with in this district, and I know everyone's committed to. But I'll rest at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hampson. Director Harris.
This is one of those places I want to go on record with respect to the operations goal of buses on time, given the missing West Seattle Bridge and the traffic cluster on Highway 99, the First Avenue Bridge, the traffic impacts to South Park and Georgetown, and the fact that our main bus barn is south of First Avenue Bridge. I spent 30 minutes in a 3-mile-long backup this morning at 10 o'clock, and it's only going to get worse when the COVID-19 issues dissipate. This is going to be a horrific issue for us to have buses on time. Other than that, I intend to vote in favor of these goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Harris. Next is Director Hersey.
No questions at this time. Excited to move forward.
Thank you, Director Mack.
Yes, thank you. Difficulty with my technology there. I appreciate the development of this new tool and the data that's being used. I recall, and maybe it didn't make it into the record, or maybe it didn't get understood as a request, but I thought I had asked to have the information about what the current data dashboard is and what those data pieces, whether or not they continue forward in this or what's changed. And I didn't see that attached to this bar. Knowing that, there's a lot going on and that might have just gotten missed in conversation, I'd like to request that either in a Friday memo or perhaps at an ops committee meeting, that we actually have the conversation about, here's the prior operation data dashboard and the data that we were tracking. Here's the new one, and here's kind of the cross mapping of what information is going to be tracked where, or what information isn't going to be tracked any longer. I just like to know what we're missing from the prior data dashboard, that we won't have the continuity going forward. So is it possible
Director
to
Mack,
request that?
Director Mack, thank you for that. I did include the previous operations data dashboard in last week's Friday memo. And so I'm happy to have further conversations about it, but it was included in last week's Friday memo.
Okay, I missed that came out. I think that maybe I just want to ping it for the next conversation around when the data dashboard is presented to us, that before that happens, to get even kind of a crosswalk of maybe the data that's missing. I need to take a look at that, but I just want to ping it for a future conversation. So thank you. I'll look back at the Friday memo and review that, and then have further conversation of where we can tie that into our conversations. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Mack. Director Rankin.
I appreciate the connection to those studies, Sherry. That's super helpful to hear, and I would like to see those attached to in a Friday memo, and any others that connect to the other data. I think it's really helpful to kind of tell the full story about why we're paying attention to what we're paying attention to. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Director Rankin. And I think, Sherry, if I could just add to that quickly while it's here, is that I wonder if where the public-facing dashboard is, if maybe that information just lives with the data dashboard wherever it's at on our website with some of those supporting documents.
That would be great.
Director DeWolf, I want to make sure I understand what you're asking. So along with the new operations data dashboard, you'd like the research to be an opportunity for folks to see the research behind this?
Sure, I think that'd be really helpful, yes. Okay, thank you. Director Rivera-Smith.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no further questions or comments, Ms. Wilson-Jones, roll call vote, please.
Director Rankin?
Aye.
Director Rivera-Smith?
Aye.
Director Hampson?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
Director Hersey?
Aye.
Director Mack?
Aye.
Director DeWolf?
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Thing you. Okay, we'll now move to action item number 3, Satterberg Foundation Elementary Feeder School Grant. May I have a motion for this item? This came through Audit and Finance on May 18th for approval. May I have a motion for this item?
This is Director Hampson. I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to accept the Satterberg Foundation Elementary Feeder School Grant grant funds in the amount of $950,000.
Second the motion.
Thank you, directors. This was moved by Director Hampson and seconded by Director Harris. We'll now move to directors for any comments or questions for Chief Financial Officer Jillian Berge before we vote. And I will start with Director Hampson, who is our Audit and Finance Committee Chair.
We had the opportunity to discuss this at length in both committee and at the former school board meeting. And so with that, I have no further comments or questions, but I'm grateful for the funds to continue this work.
Thank you. Director Harris.
Second, with enormous thanks to the foundation. And I'm sorry we can't thank them in person.
Thanks, Director Harris. Director Hersey.
No questions.
Thank you. Director Mack. Might be on mute.
Hi, yeah, I do. I'm curious to know whether or not, I know this, I'm supportive and excited, but I'm wondering whether or not any thought has gone into how these grant funds might be spent differently given the planning for the fall. Are there ongoing conversations with organizations such as this one about potentially shifting how those funds would be spent given potential different options for how we reopen schools?
Chief Berge, quickly.
Not at this time.
Okay, any other questions, Director Mack?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Director Rankin.
No questions. Just thank you to the foundation for your support.
Thank you. Director DeVetta Smith.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and I have no questions, and just sincere and utmost gratitude to the Satterberg Foundation for your support. Ms. Wilson-Jones, roll call, please.
Director Rivera-Smith,
Aye.
Director Hampson,
Aye.
Director Harris,
Aye.
Director Hersey,
Aye.
Director Mack,
Aye.
Director Rankin,
Aye.
Director DeWolf.
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you, directors. We're moving quickly through it. We got a lot more to go. We'll see new action item number 4, which is approval of contracts for specially designed instruction, tutoring services, and other compensatory education services, RFQ 02758. This came through the Audit and Finance Committee on May 18th for consideration. May I have a motion for this item?
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to execute contracts with the following agencies under RFQ 02758, specially designed instruction, Yellowwood Academy in the amount of $649,500, Maxim Healthcare Services in the amount of $950,000, Brightmont Academy in the amount of $265,000, and Brock's Academy in the amount of $250,000, and to take any necessary actions to implement these contracts.
Second the motion.
Thank you. This item has been moved by Director Hampson and seconded by Director Harris. We'll now move to directors for any comments or questions for Chief of Student Support Services, Dr. Consi Pedrosa, before we vote. So I will start with our Audit and Finance Committee Chairperson, Director Hampson.
Similarly, we had the opportunity to have good discussions about our annual contracting for these services that we're not able to provide, and grateful that we have community organizations that are able to. And with that, I have no further comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Harris.
Only a comment that I look forward to the day that Seattle Public Schools is appropriately funded for special education services, and we can deliver our own and/or with a consortium of other Washington State school districts, so that we can keep families together that have very significant special needs. Thank you. Pass.
Thank you, Director Hersey.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Mack.
No questions or comments.
Thank you, Director Rankin.
Just to concur with Director Harris, that I think it would be beneficial for all of our students to serve our students within our communities and allow kids to go to school together.
Thank you, Director Rivera-Smith.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, I have no questions at this time as well. Ms. Wilson-Jones, roll call.
Director Hampson,
Aye.
Director Harris,
Aye.
Director Hersey,
Aye.
Director Mack,
Aye.
Director Rankin,
Aye.
Director Rivera-Smith,
Aye.
Director DeWolf.
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you all. We will now move to action item number 5, review and approval of 2020 Career and Technical Education Annual Plan per Board Policy number 2170. This came through the Curriculum and Instruction Policy Committee on May 19th for approval. May I have a motion for this item, please?
I move that the board approve the 2020 Career and Technical Education Annual Plan as attached to this board action report.
Second the motion.
Thank you. This item has been moved by Director Hampson and seconded by Director Harris. This item has been updated since instruction. So Chief Academic Officer Dr. Diane DeBacker, could you please brief us on the update?
Yes, thank you, President DeWolf. The update was made to the edit in the chart where we had some duplicate numbers. Director Rivera-Smith pointed that out during introduction.
Thank you. Okay, so now to directors for any comments or questions before we move to the vote. Let's start with our Curriculum and Instruction Policy Committee Chair, Director Rankin.
No, I don't have anything further to add than has been discussed already. Again, just want to reiterate the great work and heart and enthusiasm behind the presentation of this to our committee, and that I assume carries out to their daily work. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Rankin. Next up is Director Hampson.
No questions from me. Thank you.
Director Harris.
Just the comment, extraordinarily grateful, and what a long, long way we've come in the last 5 years. Thank you. Pass.
Thank you, Director Harris. Director Hersey.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Mack.
Yeah, just a quick comment that the report and the plan are very, very thorough. And from my understanding in committee discussion, that some of the future planning around Rainier Beach is being made with capital planning as well. And so I just want to give a shout out to the cross collaboration and future planning around CTE that this report represents, and add my support and continued support for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Mack. Director Rivera-Smith.
Hey, don't hate me. So that column of the redundant paragraph, redundant bullet points, the first one is still redundant. The very first one in the second column of page 18, integrate all courses with rigorous content aligned to academic learning standards and CTE program standards. It's fully 5th bullet on again. So anyways, that one's still hanging on.
This is Diane. I do see that, and we can make that correction.
All right, yeah, I'm no hugie, but sorry. No questions.
Oh, that's great. Chief Narver, do we need to adjust anything in our motion for that, or does that?
To make those corrections, you mean?
I think it would be just to strike the redundant paragraph. Does that sound correct, Director?
Yeah, I think you offer a new motion to approve it as with that amendment.
Okay, so Director Rivera-Smith, would you like to move that?
Yeah, I'll motion. Well, if no one else has questions, I guess I'm the last one, aren't I? None. Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Wilson-Jones, I think I don't have any questions as well. So Ms. Wilson-Jones, I think I'll take it to you.
One moment, just adding the new motion into our voting sheet. Director Rankin,
Aye.
Director Hampson,
Aye.
Director Harris,
Aye.
Hersey,
Aye.
Director Mack.
Aye.
Apologies for going out of order. Director Rivera Smith
Aye.
and Director DeWolf.
Aye.
Passed unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, so up next is item number 6. And Chief Counsel Narver, I have a question here. I was asked by staff if they might combine the conversations for items 6 through 11, as we have done similarly in the past, although I know it was done in introduction. So do you have a comment on how we might proceed to?
I do. I believe there were two of these items that have been changed since introduction, and so Chief Podesta should address those separately. And already introduced. There's nothing more he needs to say about them other than to be prepared to answer questions about any of those items. Of course, they have to be voted on separately, but they can be presented together as long as he speaks to two that have been changed since introduction.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we will now move on to action item number 6. And Fred, I'll let you take the control in one moment. But this is Bex 4, approval of budget transfer and award contract P5132, bid number B012042 to CDK Construction Services, Inc. for the Whitman Middle School Seismic Improvements Project. My one curiosity, Greg, is do I let Fred jump in now to describe as the bulk of the 6 through 11, or do I? What's your suggestion?
I'm sorry. In terms of how they are presented to the board?
I just let Fred jump in here and.
Yes, however he wants to do it, he can note that there is number 6, there were no changes, and unless there are questions, he intends to move ahead to, I believe number 7 has been changed since introduction.
Great, thank you, Chief Operations Officer Fred Podesta. I'll address the items 7 and 11 that had changes, and then open it up for questions for any of the 6 contract bars. These are all capital construction projects that went to committee before the procurement process was finalized, which is why these ended up for consideration. Action item 7 relates to athletic lighting at Whitman Middle School. And there was some language that was inaccurate in the bar as introduced, describing a couple of community meetings that had been copied from another lighting bar, because there's so many of these done, and that was inappropriate as those meetings were not held. And so that was struck from the board action report. Item 11 relates to an addition to West Woodland Elementary School, and the added language just reflected that the operations committee got a design presentation from the project architects on March 2nd.
Okay, so I'm going to move through items 6 through 11. I'll read them. We'll do all of our motions and seconds, and we'll go from there. Okay, so we'll now move to action item number 6, Bex 4, approval of budget transfer and award contract P5132, bid number B012042 to CDK Construction Services, Inc. for the Whitman Middle School Seismic Improvements Project. This came to the Operations Committee on April 27th for consideration. May I have a motion for this item?
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to, 1, implement a budget transfer in the amount of $53,871 from BEX4 program contingency to Whitman Middle School Seismic Improvement Project, and 2, execute construction contract P5132 with CDK Construction Services, Inc. in the amount of $1,560,000 plus Washington State sales tax, with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to implement the contract.
Second the motion.
Thank you. This has been moved by Director Hampson and seconded by Director Harris. So I'll start with our Operations Committee Chair, Director Mack, and we'll move through directors until the roll call vote. So Director Mack.
Yes, first, I just want to say I appreciate being able to bundle these together. I know how thorough staff is in working through the bars and how we've discussed these at length in ops, as well as my one question, well, two questions. One question around ensuring that I'm just looking to make sure. There was one school that had a recent design review, and that was added to the bar to clarify that that's happened, and anyone can refer back to that meeting, just to ensure that there isn't another one in here that should have that updated as well. West Woodland, was that the one that had the update about when the design review was presented?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's right, because I as I'm looking at these, it looks like the rest of them are not the recent design review ones. But going forward, it's helpful to have that information to reference back to for the public that's interested in maybe seeing the overarching project.
Director Mack, the other projects are much smaller.
Right. With respect to number 11, the West Woodland Elementary Addition and Modernization project. I just want to note that recently we got public comment about the concern that 12 classrooms is not enough given the growth in the city. And when I saw that, I kind of had to smile that we already know that the work we're continuing to do is not anywhere close to what we need to do. And I just wanted to publicly acknowledge that for the constituent that wrote in with concern about whether or not we have sufficient capacity in our buildings, and just kind of underscore that we continue with that challenge, and even more so in the current environment. And with that, I don't have any additional questions. Just support and gratitude for the massive amount of work that Capital Projects continues to push forward to make buildings safe and welcoming for our students.
Thank you, Director Mack. Next up is Director Hampson.
No questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Harris.
No questions for me, thank you.
Thank you, Director Hersey.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rankin.
No questions from me.
Thank you, Director Rivera Smith.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, and none for me, Ms. Wilson-Jones, so roll call, please.
Director Hersey,
Aye.
Director Mack,
Aye.
Director Rankin,
Aye.
Director Rivera Smith,
Aye.
Director Hampson,
Aye.
Director Harris,
Aye.
Director Wolf.
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you. We'll now move to action item number 7, BEX 5, award contract P5145 for athletic field lighting projects at Whitman Middle School. This came to the Operations Committee on April 27th for consideration. May I have a motion for this item, please?
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to execute the following contracts with the King County Directors Association, KCDA, for athletic field lighting project contract P5145 in the amount of $757,256 for Whitman Middle School plus Washington State sales tax with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to implement the contracts.
Second the motion.
Thank you, Director Harris. Moved by Director Hampson and seconded by Director Harris. I'm just going to move to Director Mack for any final comments or questions, and then I'm just going to open it up generally for questions as opposed to going through each, and we'll ask a roll call. So Director Mack, any Comments, questions, concerns? Elevate. I think you mentioned it in your last comment, but.
I know that there's been some concern around this specific project and field lighting, and I think that we had thorough discussion and thoughts around those concerns, and so nothing to add at this time.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Happy
Okay.
to go ahead and call the vote.
Do directors have any questions, comments, concerns?
Director Harris has a question for Chief
Director Harris.
Podesta.
Yes.
Chief Podesta, you've seen the email and the public testimony that's come in regarding the SEPA process from homeowners. Do you have comments in response to that?
I have seen public comments, relating to, concerns about lighting at the fields, as the district has continued to strive to use the most modern technology that focus the light on the field and causes little light pollution as possible to the surrounding neighborhoods. The action of keeping the fields, there probably isn't much of a solution around using the fields later. That's the intent of the lights, which some communities have also responded to. Given the demand for athletic fields by both students, community use that we also share with Seattle Parks and Recreation, I don't know that we have a choice, but to keep trying to make as intense a use of our facilities as possible to give everyone access. So we're trying through design mechanisms, to make as little impact as possible on the built environment in the fields. And we understand the concerns of the neighborhood and design around those as best as we can.
Can you also address the intergovernmental issues with respect to the Parks Department, that they give us access to fields and recess areas and sports where we don't have that? And then there is a collaboration for the future here because we're not making new property?
And that's true. Our enrollment continues to grow. We are open buildings. We are expanding buildings and taking up more space on our sites. We have not acquired new property, and the city continues to grow. So we work hand in hand with the Parks Department to try to share all of our green spaces as much as possible. And I think this has been a good deal for the district. We get as good as we give on this front, and we're able to add to instructional space, add classroom space, and then leverage these community resources. So it isn't really the case that we're not getting equitable use of fields. We opened a comprehensive high school at the start of this school year and are relying on that relationship with parks to provide for athletic fields that school does not have. And so that's an important relationship and has been beneficial to the district.
Thank you, Chief. Any more questions, Director Harris?
No, sir.
Thank you. Are there any more questions about item number 7 from directors?
Quickly, yes, the last meeting, I appreciate you taking out the reference to the meetings that didn't take place, but I understood I thought Richard had said there were 2 separate community meetings, and that this was maybe discussed and he would supply the dates for that. Was that not something that happened, or you have that?
Richard is still, Mr. Bess, our director of capital construction, capital projects and planning, is still looking through records and is our records we could not pinpoint the dates of those meetings. The staff that staffed those meetings have since retired, and we're trying to unearth the records. So for now, we can't say with absolute certainty what date those meetings were held. So we struck the language from the bar. I think there's still a belief that there were in fact some public meetings, but we have not been able to find those records.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other final questions or comments for Chief Podesta before we do roll call? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Wilson-Jones, roll call for item number 7, please.
Director Mack. Director Mack.
Aye. Yeah, sorry, aye.
Thank you. Director Rankin.
Aye.
Director Rivera-Smith.
Aye.
Director Hampson.
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
Director Hersey.
Aye.
Director DeWolf.
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Thanks, Ms. Wilson-Jones. We will now move to action item number 8, BEX 5, award construction contract P5140, bid number B032062 to Field Turf USA for the athletic field improvements at Ballard High School project. This came to the Operations Committee on April 27th for consideration. May I have a motion for this item, please?
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to execute construction contract P5140 with Field Turf USA in the amount of $663,566, including base bid plus Washington State sales tax, with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to implement the contract.
Second the motion.
Thank you. So now I will open it up to directors generally for comments or questions for Mr. Podesta before we vote. Director Mack, I will let you start as our Operations Committee Chair if you have any burning comments.
No questions or comments.
Thank you. Do other board directors have questions or comments for Mr. Podesta?
Yes.
Director Harris.
Just want to reiterate and clarify with Chief Podesta that this is a cork infill and that this district has not done rubber, tire, cancerous athletic fields for the last 4 years. Is that correct, sir?
Both those are correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Podesta before we move to the roll call? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Wilson-Jones, roll call vote, please.
Director Rankin.
Aye.
Director Rivera-Smith.
Aye.
Director Hampson.
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
Director Hersey.
Aye.
Director Mack.
Aye.
Director DeWolf.
Aye.
Motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to action item number 9. This is BTA 4, award construction contract K5120, bid number B032063 to Coast Turf, the athletic field improvements at Nathan Hale High School and Jane Addams Middle School project. This came to the Operations Committee on April 27th for consideration. May I have a motion for this item, please?
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to execute construction contract K5120 with Coast to Coast Turf in the amount of $1,786,980, including base bid plus alternates number 1 and 2 plus Washington State sales tax, with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to implement the contract.
Second the motion.
Thank you. This item has been moved by Director Hampson and seconded by Director Harris. We will now move to Director Mack for any burning questions, concerns, comments before the general questions. Anything, Director Mack?
No questions or comments at this time. Again, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, concerns from Director Harris?
And I want to reiterate the last question or comment and clarification from Chief Podesta. 4 years ago, the Seattle Public School District took the lead in getting rid of carcinogenic causing fire recycled fill athletic fields, and other districts throughout the country have taken our lead. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Harris. Any other questions questions, comments from directors? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Wilson-Jones, roll call for item number 9, please.
Director Rivera-Smith,
Aye.
Director Hampson,
Aye.
Director Harris,
Aye.
Director Hersey,
Aye.
Director Mack,
Aye.
Director Rankin,
Aye.
Director DeWolf.
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you. We will now move to action item number 10, BEX 5, award construction contract P5146, bid number B012039 to Olympic Peninsula Construction, Inc. for the North Beach Elementary School, Sacagawea Elementary School, and Jane Addams Middle School pavement repairs project. This came to the Operations Committee on April 27th for consideration. May I have a motion for this item, please?
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to execute construction contract P5146 with Olympic Peninsula Construction in the amount of $1,007,700, including base bid plus alternate number 1 plus Washington State sales tax, with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to implement the contract.
Second the motion.
Thank you. This item has been moved by Director Hampson and seconded by Director Harris. We'll now move to directors for questions and comments or concerns. We'll start with Director Mack as our Operations Committee Chair.
No questions or comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Mack. Open to all directors. Any comments, questions, or concerns on action item number 10 before the roll call vote?
Question from Director Harris for Chief
Director Harris.
Podesta. Chief Podesta, does this also address the North Beach Elementary water seepage off of the east hill?
I'm sorry, Director Harris, could you repeat that? I didn't quite catch the question.
North Beach Elementary has significant issues with water seepage off of the east hill onto the playground and facilities that our many portables there are located upon, so that there's flooding and you almost need hip waders to get to the portable. Does this also address those water retention issues?
My understanding is this does make some improvements with surface water management. I'm not sure that it addresses absolutely every issue, but there are some related to this asphalt in particular that it does improve the situation. I can get further information for you if you like.
And could you put that in a Friday memo, please, sir?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Harris. Great reminder. I do remember about that. Any other questions, Director Harris?
No, sir.
Okay.
Director DeWolf,
Director Hampson.
It can go into a Friday memo. Chief Podesta, it hadn't occurred to me before to ask about the permeability of the surfaces as it pertains to runoff in general, and the deleterious effects of runoff. And so if there's anything that we have policy-wise or procedure-wise relative to that decision-making, I'd love to be informed about it at some point in the near future. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Director Hampson. Any other questions or comments from directors at this time on action item number 10? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Wilson-Jones, roll call, please.
Director Hampson,
Aye.
Director Harris,
Aye.
Director Hersey,
Aye.
Director Mack,
Aye.
Rankin,
Aye.
Director Rivera-Smith,
Aye.
Director DeWolf.
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you. Next item is item number 11. BEX 5 Distress School Grant and K-3 Class Size Reduction Grant. Award construction contract P5149 for bid number B012049 to Allied Construction Associates, Inc. for the West Woodland Elementary Addition and Modernization Project. This came to the Operations Committee on May 14th for consideration. May I have a motion for this item, please?
I move that the school board A, authorize the superintendent to execute construction contract P5149 with Allied Construction Associates, Inc. in the amount of $14,536,000 plus Washington State sales tax with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to implement the contract. And B, approve a one-time fund transfer of $1,700,000 from the BEX 5 program contingency funds to the West Woodland Elementary Addition and Modernization Project.
Second the motion.
Thank you. What a mouthful. Okay, this has been moved by Director Hampson and seconded by Director Harris. This has been updated since introduction, and Mr. Podesta, you did brief us a little bit about that. So I'm going to move it over to directors for any comments, questions, or concerns before the vote, and start with Director Mack, who is our Operations Committee Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to appreciate the questions that have come forward from the various directors on all of these items, and just reiterate that we have robust conversation about these bars as they come through ops, and also excellent minutes that are taken that I'm not sure anyone has enough time to go through all of that, but it's you can find some good information there if you want to go back and research the questions that were asked and how they're answered. Excited to move forward on this this project.
Thank you, Director Mack. I'll open it up to general questions, not general, open it up to all directors for any comments, questions, or concerns before Ms. Wilson-Jones takes us to the vote. Do directors have questions, comments, concerns? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Wilson-Jones, roll call vote, please.
Director Harris?
Aye.
Director Hersey?
Aye.
Director Mack?
Aye.
Director Rankin?
Aye.
Director Rivera-Smith?
Aye.
Director Hampson?
Aye.
Director DeWolf?
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you, directors, for all your patience. We are running a little bit behind time, but I think we will be okay. And we still have our executive session after. So now we'll move to introduction item number 1, approval of the 2020-2021 superintendent evaluation documents. This came to the executive committee on May 20th for consideration. I'll be happy to give some background here, and then I'll ask the superintendent or any of the other folks from executive committee to add comments. So this motion would approve the 2020-2021 superintendent evaluation documents. They are in alignment with state law, board policy, and the 2019 through 2024 strategic plan. These documents were developed in compliance with the board policy and procedure number 1630 and 1630 BP, evaluation of the superintendent. The proposed 2020-2021 evaluation instruments continue the 2019-2020 focus on African American males reading at or above grade level by 3rd grade, and adds a broader executive management / leadership goal with an emphasis on human resources operations. This board action report came to the executive committee after extensive collaboration with executive committee members and the superintendent and her team, and it came officially on May 20th, 2020, and was moved forward for consideration by this full board. So I'm going to let either the soup or other, I'll let the superintendent start, and then we'll call on the other executive committee members for any other comments, and then questions and comments from the remaining directors. So Superintendent Juneau.
Oh yeah, sure. I'll just be brief. There's been a lot of conversation about this already, but I do want to thank the executive committee for working with me to develop these proposed documents. I thought it was really great conversation. I'm also really proud of the work this last year around the 3rd grade reading goal, NCS Excellence, our strategic plan, and you've heard a lot about that as well. And I'm pleased that work will continue and will continue to be the focus of the evaluation, because as we know, it is a multi-year process to make sure that we are doing everything we can to make sure students are reading at 3rd grade. I do support the focus on HR operations within the 2nd goal of effective management. It we all know that it's very important work, and including it in my evaluation will give me an opportunity to highlight our progress throughout the year. And as you all know, I will need your support on these hard decisions that come forward as well. I know that we'll continue to have robust conversations about these goals throughout the next year, but just really appreciate the collaborative approach to it.
Thank you, Superintendent Junot. I'll just work down the list alphabetically because the next two speakers are from the executive committee, and then we'll move to the full board. So Director Hampson, any questions, comments, or anything you'd like to elevate at this time?
I'd like to pass for now and hear from other directors.
Thank you. Director Harris.
Couple of things. One, Director Hampson's collaboration and assistance on the overarching management goal, if you will, because it's not just about the rubrics for third grade reading or the operations dashboard for an over $1 billion budget a year. And please, for a couple of other reasons. One, we added the word dyslexia, and certainly the issue that we have many of our children suffering from dyslexia, including over-identified Black and brown children, and getting busy on strategies to work with that. Also, very pleased that the executive committee recommended significantly more money on the HR fixes. Beyond pleased, there were 4 executive sessions, and they were, as we say, robust conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Harris. Yes, they're really great conversations, and I appreciate you highlighting the specific and explicit inclusion of dyslexia, as well as when we think about our next year, we also included digital components to address potential remote or virtual learning. So I will now move to Director Hersey for any comments or questions.
None for me at this time. I'm excited about the direction.
Thank you, Director Hersey. Director Mack.
Yes, thank you. In reviewing the documents, I'm just a little confused, and maybe it's a matter of the headings, titles of the goals, or that they're not numbered. And so maybe it's a kind of more of an administrative management of the documents here. As I look at them, the first page talks about third grade reading only. And so I'm just kind of confused. So there's third grade reading on page 5, and it talks about the third grade reading goal. But I don't see the other goals called out in that introduction, and so I'm having a hard time understanding. So I'm just having a hard time. It looks like there's
I'm happy to help.
3 different goals here, but I'm not tracking how they're organized.
Understood. So if you go to the first thing you're looking at, says Intro to Soup Eval third grade reading. Scroll down a little bit further, and the next section says Superintendent Eval Goals, Effective Leadership and Management, and then has a similar introduction page with similar narrative there. And so all those are captured in that second.
So maybe it would be helpful to the narrative for clarity. I don't know if it's in the bar or the first page to say that just simply there are 3 superintendent goals, and they are high level, these 3, or something, because I'm just reading the documents. It's very hard to track that. So having a summary statement at the beginning of this document of what the goals are would be helpful to me.
Is Aaron or Sherry on this call? Yes, they are. So I think we can capture those notes.
Yeah, I mean, this is Superintendent June. I think it's in the narrative. So I'm just asking, do you want specific headings, or it is in the narrative of the bar in the second paragraph? on our third paragraph under background information.
Denise, Superintendent, I think might what be helpful is as opposed to starting with introduction to 2020 SUP eval goals, third grade reading, almost a quick page that just almost describes what you're about to read, which is it almost would look similar to the tabs page from your 2019 eval where you share those kind of goals broken out. So just almost just like a little table of contents that says what you're about to read and then highlighting those goals.
Yeah, I think I agree with that as an intro page that says the superintendent's evaluation includes these 3 goals, and then they're found on these pages. Instead of just going into the different sections because it's harder to track. Having that summary as part of the packet would be very helpful as a first page.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Rankin.
Sorry, I was not prepared for that to be me next, obviously. No, I don't have any questions. I want to thank the exec committee. Their very intentional work around creating some meaningful and direct ways to evaluate that are specific as opposed to sort of, big goals that really have to do with the job of the superintendent. So I just really appreciate the work that you all have done.
Thank you, Director Rivera-Smith.
No questions, thank you. I was in the executive meeting that this was discussed, and I saw the thorough job you guys did, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Director Rivera-Smith. Okay, I also spoke. If Director Hampson, you want to say anything before we move on? I know you had passed.
No, I guess I would just, when you are head down and doing this work in particular, it's easy to kind of feel in the weeds, and so I would just ask before we move to action that every board director gives it a good solid look and feels comfortable with it, because we had a lot of discussion this year about maybe things we should have thought of last year, and so hindsight's always 20/20, but let's give this another good read and make sure that everyone feels good about it for next year. I know things are changing in real time, and one of the things that I think is really critical is that this is able to be flexible enough for good evaluation, regardless of what things look like next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you everybody for the great discussion. We'll now move to introduction item number 2, amending board policy number 6222, selection of contractors for small construction projects. This came to the Audit and Finance Committee on May 18th for approval. Chief Financial Officer Jolynn Berge, I believe you will be briefing us.
Good afternoon. This board action report makes edits to board policy 6222, selection of contractors for small construction projects, in order to align with new limits in state law. The state legislature made changes to the small works roster limits. This proposed change would increase the amount allowed under our current policy from $200,000 to the new legal limit of $350,000. That would conclude my remarks.
Chief Berge, I'm going to start off with our Audit and Finance Committee Chairperson Hampson and then work through the list. So Director Hampson, to you.
Yeah, I don't have anything particular to add. Anytime we can get things updated and consistent with state law, I think it's important. Otherwise, I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Director Harris.
This is a question for Chief Berge. How do we continue to elevate and enhance our request that we have robust outreach to women and minority business-owned enterprises?
So we continue to be members of the city's Tabor, 100 group. So we continue to do that. We continue also, anytime that we hear or get feedback or someone just emails us and says, hey, I'm a woman or minority-owned business, I'd like to be notified the next time you do any sort of X type of procurement, we keep them on a list. And then we're looking for other ways, frankly, to continue that outreach and to enhance who we can notify for certain bodies of work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Harris. Next up is Director Hersey.
No questions for me at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Mack.
I'm curious to know whether or not this policy may again be impacted by the conversations of the student and community workforce agreement and anything that may come out of that. Is it possible this might get opened up again after that process?
If Chief Podesta is here, I think he could probably answer that too. And obviously Chief Berge as well, but.
Not to my knowledge. Fred?
I would agree. The student and community workforce agreement projects have a threshold of a contract threshold that will be in the millions. So it doesn't really apply to these small projects.
Thank you. Director Mack, any more questions?
Thanks for the clarification. Nope, thanks for the clarification.
Thank you. Director Rankin.
I do not have any questions at this time.
Thank you. Director Nevada Smith.
No questions for me, thank you.
Thank you. And I have no questions, but thank you for the work on this, Chief Berge.
Thank you to my staff. Thank you.
Of course. We'll now move to intro item number 3, revising board policy number 6901, capital levy planning, and adopting board policy number 6900, facilities planning. I can already tell Director Mack, so excited to be here. This came to the Operations Committee on March 24th for approval. Mr. Podesta, I believe you'll be briefing us, and then I will start with Director Mack for Operations Chair.
What this action does, while we are in fact creating a new policy, what's actually happening is we're splitting an existing policy into two. The previous board policy 6901, really, which was titled capital levy planning, but that's where all our policies about long-range facility planning resided in there. And that really created practical constraint that the policy was really about planning a single levy. It did not really give the space to do comprehensive long-range planning independent of a particular levy action and, frankly, that particular funding source. So the policies have been split to create a new 6900 that is just about facility planning independent of levy planning, which allows us to have a longer planning horizon, allows us to consider other funding sources beyond levies, and they're really two different subjects, and so they're now two different policies. They also, in drafting the two, we were able to more explicitly center the policies on the district's values, and that to add language to make sure that when this planning does occur, these are really just policies about planning, they're not plans themselves, that policy 0030 is taken into account, and that for capital prioritization and for long-range facility planning, that all equity issues are built into the processes. And the Operations Committee met about this several times because there was a lot of detailed work to be done to put the right language in the right places. But other than centering our values, there is an enormous amount of change here. It's just really organizing actions that we really took. And I want to thank the committee and Director Mack for kind of their staying power of going through this issue with a fine-tooth comb. And I think we're much better positioned with these two separate policies than we were before. And that's all the comments I have. I entertain any questions you might have.
Thank you, Chief Podesta. I'll turn it over to Director Mack as our Operations Committee Chair to share more background for directors.
Well, as you know, President DeWolf and Director Harris, that this work has been ongoing for the past couple of years to update 6901 and have a overarching facilities planning policy to disentangle the two and be more thoughtful around our planning processes. So I'm super excited to finally get this to the full board. We've had conversations upon conversations upon conversations And my question to Mr. Podesta, just to, in reviewing it, I'd have to go look at my notes. I want to check in to be sure that they're from the last operations committee meeting. Are there any changes that were made by staff from the documents that we walked away from that meeting with, and the agreements that we made around language? There haven't been any additional changes made since that time, or I just want to make sure that there's not like something in there that I didn't catch that got changed in the interim.
No, to my knowledge, there have been no changes since the last operations meeting, the last operations meeting where this was discussed.
Okay, great. And then I do want to elevate a couple things that are, I think, helpful to our processes. One is elevating in policy the educational specs and clarity around those, and how they interact with our planning processes in our buildings. And also I'm trying to figure out where the language is, but in the levy policy, the technology planning, Mr. Podesta, can you help me here for a second? We had robust conversations around technology, and I'm trying to find the language here that we landed on.
Landed on a statement in the levy policy, since levies fund a lot of our technology investment. And I believe the direction that the board is headed to is to, at some point, develop a companion, perhaps 6902, that is long-range technology planning, just like we've decoupled facility planning from levy planning. 6901 has a reference to technology, saying that it needs to be included in the levy planning because that's how we fund a lot of technology. But that long-range technology planning also needs to be done separately from levy planning, independent from its funding source, and that's future work to be taken up by the board.
Yes, thank you. And I think that the way that it ended up in the levy planning in this levy planning policy 6901, it continues to acknowledge that investments will be made to maintain and improve technology operations, equipment, and services, including student learning and supports, district systems and data, and technology infrastructure and security. And it also calls out technology needs that our capital levies will cover those things. And so when we go through the process of approving those levies, those specific plans that are identified in that levy for technology is one of the places of oversight of the board of deciding what, how much, what are we doing, that sort of thing. But that the additional support that we need to provide our oversight still is to have a bit more of a robust technology planning process that engages board approval. So not just within the levy, but kind of the longer range. And that my understanding is that staff is supportive of developing that policy. And so that's something that's kind of next on the plate. So thank you for highlighting that. And I just appreciate all of the, long, hard, intense conversations and the work that's gone on with this. And thank you.
Thank you, Director Mack. Next, Director Hampson.
Hi. Yeah. I believe we do have a technology master plan that's being drafted. But I actually had a question. I'm trying to get a handle on the extent to which any of this should be in a procedure, whether it's board or superintendent procedure, primarily on 6901, the capital levy planning. Is that I assume that's something that was discussed, and so I'm just trying to get a sense of how that discussion results. Some of it seems to get really specific. And then it says staff, but it doesn't, it doesn't say superintendent will direct staff or will develop procedure for, it gets into staff. So it feels a little,
Can you clarify which specific language you're talking about here?
So we're talking about the general board principles, right, for planning, guiding principles. And then it gets into kind of some slightly less specific topics. Again, I'm on 6901. The priorities for the selection, developing a plan, and then articulating some pretty specific items. Like I said, I'm just wondering the rationale for having something in procedure is that it's much easier to change than policy. And so I'm just wondering what the consideration was for having pieces that would need to be a little bit more flexible than therefore in procedure.
So actually, I think the pieces that you're referring to in 6901 are pieces that have been in our policy, and that there isn't an accompanying procedure that was written. So the determination that when we're doing the capital levy planning, that we need to set the prioritization, that the board's responsible for setting those high-level principles. Exactly how that happens and what metrics are used, etc., is not defined in the policy, but the overarching statement that these are things that we will do in order to guide the selection of projects was in our existing policy. So it's actually not a change. It's to our steps for a board, and that those procedural steps actually just the additional steps. There's not a superintendent procedure that goes along with it.
Director Hampson, are you comfortable? Can I move forward? Do you have more questions?
Well, I wanted to hear from staff as well about the.
I think, to be honest, Director Mack has described it well, that the bulk of this work was deciding what needed to come out of the policy to create a standalone facility master planning process. And so what remains has been there and has worked. It's not to say that your question isn't a valid one, and maybe as we plan the next levy, we'll see if there's too much specificity in this policy, but I don't think staff had an issue because this is what we've worked with for quite a while.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, because it being there before, we have some very lengthy policies that could arguably be divided up into policy and procedure, not because for control issues, but because certain things need to have more flexibility year to year than others. And so that's all I was trying to get at. Was that conversation had, and if so, the outcome.
Thanks. Any more questions, Director Hampson?
No.
Okay, Director Harris.
First of all, big props to my colleague Eden Mack, Chair of Operations. She has guided and shepherded this standing committee. I have heard from several members of this standing committee that they're very excited and they find it robust. Big props as well to Chief Podesta and to Superintendent Junot for making this happen. Also, big props to the board for the guiding principles on the last levy. And I would suggest if we do need procedures, they need to be board procedures because this is a board enacted committee. Thanks very much. I'm thrilled about this. This is a long range, 5, 10, 15 years that we've been waiting for, as opposed to reactive.
Director Hersey.
We've discussed this extensively in ops, and I'm just excited to see that it is finally here. So I am good. No questions or comments at the time.
Thanks, Director Hersey. I do trust that. All right, next is Director Rankin.
Just want to echo the support for having the technology planning and levy planning be separate, and also that within that we've got classroom technology needs versus sort of infrastructure technology needs. So I'm just really glad that we're examining those things separately as they need to be, and making sure that the needs of our teachers and our buildings are driving our spending, as opposed to spending on something and then figuring out what to do with it. So just appreciate the work going into all of this.
Thank you. Director Rivera Smith.
Yeah, no, big thanks to Director Mack for the tireless work on this. Has been discussed thoroughly, and I'm just happy to see it happen. So no questions or comments.
Awesome. Thank you, Director Rivera Smith. And Director Mack, I'll just say, folks, thank you for your work on this, and I've appreciated your support. One example I just want to highlight for directors is the really exciting and transformative and just really pride-centric resolution we just passed for LGBTQIA+ students. This is one of the policies that is impacted, and I collaborate with Director Mack to include language in these policies so that future construction incorporates at least one multi-stall gender-neutral restroom in facilities. So I appreciate the work on this, Director Mack, and also Ronald Boyd for your help there. And I don't have any other questions at this time. So we can move on to item number 4, which is BEX 4 Resolution 2019/20-20 Final Acceptance of Contract P5034 with Lighting Construction, Inc. for the Wilson Pacific Elementary and Middle Schools, Cascadia Elementary, Robert Eagle Staff Middle, and Licton Springs K-8 project. This came to the Operations Committee on March 2nd for approval. Mr. Bedesta, I believe you'll be briefing us, and then I'll hand it over to Director Mack again.
Yes, this is, our favorite milestones on these capital construction board actions is the final acceptance of a completed project. This caps off the replacement of the Wilson Pacific buildings with Robert Eagle staff, Licton Springs and Cascadia Elementary. The projects were completed a couple of years ago. The buildings have been occupied since the fall of 2017, all punch list items and project closeout work is complete, and this will allow the board to put forward a resolution to accept our completed and occupied buildings.
Thank you, Chief Podesta. Now over to Director Mack, our Operations Committee Chair.
I love celebrating final acceptance, and just super excited for this to be in front of us.
Thank you. I'll just open it up to all directors if you have questions or comments, concerns about this final acceptance. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item number 5. This is extending the suspension of provisions of board policy number 2420, high school grade and credit marking through August 2020. Dr. Diane DeBacker, I believe you'll be briefing us.
Yes, thank you, President DeWolf. This board action report asked you to extend the suspension of portions of board policy number 2420, our high school grade and credit marking policy, through August of this year. Changing the available grade options for the courses during summer school would make the options A or incomplete, and that would be consistent with what we're doing now during the COVID pandemic. This bar represents the extension given that we believe we need to continue to take steps to minimize harm by the COVID pandemic, and especially and particularly for those students who are furthest from educational justice. As we've noted in the bar, there are differences between our second semester work and our summer offerings for high school course and credits. For example, our summer offerings are much more narrow in that we have Apex offerings, Skills Center, internships, world language opportunities, and some of our high school offer school-specific credit-bearing courses. But even given that, we believe that we do need to extend this grading policy through the summer because the same situations occur and that students may not have as many opportunities to be successful or as successful with the regular grading policy during this time. We were unable to bring this through committee and do as much engagement as we would have liked to have done, in part because we only received guidance from OSPI in their April guidance as to that the grading policy should extend through the summer. So that is why we are bringing it to you now, and it has not gone through the CNI committee in the normal manner, and Director Rankin can speak to that if so desired. With that, I stand for questions.
Thank you, Dr. DeBacker. I appreciate that background, and I'll just start with Director Rankin as the committee chairperson of the Curriculum and Instruction Policy Committee.
Thank you, President DeWolf and Dr. DeBacker. Yeah, so this, because of timing of when recommendations came from OSPI and then when we need to have grading and policy in place for the summer before classes start, that there weren't enough meeting dates to do a preview for the board or for the committee, a vote through the committee, intro, and then action. And so what we decided was that since it was an extension of the policy that we already went over in great detail, and it was just an extension of the timing, that the decision that I made to help us make up some of the time in the scheduling was that it was more important to have the public be noticed over 2 regular board meetings, intro today and action at the next time. That took priority over cycling it through committee as usual, and then having the meeting be intro and the item be intro and action at the same regular board meeting. So that was the decision making there, and we did have it a verbal update about it in committee yesterday, noticing and whatnot to have the full process. So, but we were all comfortable with that, and yes, what the realization was that it didn't make a lot of sense to hold students to the traditional grading policy when the situation that is in place that necessitated this semester's policy hasn't changed. They're still facing the same challenges over the summer that we were facing this semester. So that is, I think, about it.
Thank you, Director Rankin. Appreciate the background. So we'll move to directors quickly, starting with Director. Maybe muted, Director Hampson.
Oh, no, sorry, you cut out. I couldn't hear what you said. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Harris.
No comments or questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Harris. Director Hersey.
No questions, but still want to just make sure that it's on all of our radars that I would like to see a lessons learned work session from specifically our grading policy to see how it impacts, especially our students furthest away from educational justice after we get past August. So no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Mack.
I have a little bit of a question, and I think maybe more of a comment around the timing of when OSPI put out the recommendations and when we adopted our grading policy, and that we wouldn't need to be taking this action now if we had actually been thorough in that process and waited for the OSPI recommendations to come out. And I just want to advocate strongly for us to be mindful of those things going forward around various recommendations that are going to come out of OSPI around reopening schools and other things where it's helpful if we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. And I just want to make sure that we are setting up our timelines and building in appropriate community engagement going forward, so we don't have to backtrack and do additional things like another policy. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Mack. Director Devetta Smith.
Thank you. No questions.
Thank you. And my only question, just to confirm, Dr. DeBacker or Liza, is that there's no substantive changes, correct?
That is
I mean, no content. It's just about the extension.
correct. It's just about the extension.
Okay, thank you. I think you have no other questions on that, and really grateful for the work on this and happy about the process. So that moves us into, I have a question for directors. We have Director Hampson will be sharing an announcement of completed internal audits, and then we can still have our director board comments if you'd like. My suggestion, given we're over time, is to move into the executive session, but I will let Director Hampson share her internal audit work, and then I'll ask directors what their feelings are about either foregoing board comments or not. Director Hampson. Director Hampson, that's you for completing.
Yes, sorry, I'm trying to pull up the document. I had it.
Director, President DeWolf, this is Director Mack, and as she's prepping that, I would like to suggest that if people have burning comments tonight, then I appreciate that. But I think that given time and so forth, that I'd be happy to forego board comments tonight.
Thank you. I'm in concurrence with you. So Director Hampson, do you have those documents ready to share?
Not yet. I'm still looking for it. If Ellie can remind me specifically what it's called.
So Ellie, while you're helping that, if other directors concur with Eden and foregoing board comments so we can move to executive session, let me know your thoughts.
Oh, I found it. So, hold on. Announcement. I got it. Okay. Am I still on?
You are.
Okay. Here we go. Board Procedure 6550BP, Internal Audit, requires an announcement of completed internal audits. As the Audit and Finance Committee Chair, I am announcing that at the June 2nd Quarterly Audit and Finance Committee meeting, the Office of Internal Audit presented an internal audit report on stipends. All findings and recommendations are discussed at a public Audit and Finance Committee meeting, and the completed reports are available online at the Office of Internal Audit's public webpage. If you'd like to find that, click on Departments and Services under the Directory tab, and then click on Internal Audit. Thank you.
Director DeWolf?
Director Harris.
2 comments, and then I will cede my director comment time. 1, huge congratulations to our graduates and our risers. And so very sad that we can't have in-person graduations. And 2, this evening at 6:30, we have student comments via Zoom. And we invite them all to come aboard for reopening community engagement, student voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Do other directors have any comments they'd like to share now? Any burning comments?
I do.
Director Rankin.
This Friday, I had asked about the possibility of a district-wide strike, and legally I don't think that we can do that, but I just wanted to state that I know I, and I think several other board directors too, will be in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter Seattle King County chapter with a call for a silent march and strike and day of action. And then I also just want to add my voice to those asking that I know the phrase defund the police, it can sound scary, but what that actually means is a reconsideration of our values and our budgets, and that that we've come to a situation in our schools and in our society where discipline and punishment is the only tool that we have at our disposal, instead of compassion and care and support and trauma-informed, anti-bias, anti-racist teaching and educating. So I'm just going to say, just add to that, that what we really need is early learning support, childcare support, support for mental health, family support, and housing for our families. And those are all things that the city could help us out a lot with, that doesn't impact the way that the budgeting works for schools from the state, and would have a huge impact on the health and safety of our kids and of our city. And Black Lives Matter, and I'm done.
Thank you. Any other directors?
This is Director Hampson. I will just briefly say what I said in my video, in case it doesn't go anywhere. In my congratulatory video to seniors at my district high school, that this graduating class has earned their high school diploma like no class before them. And that while this may seem like the defining moment of their life, that the truly defining moments of their lives are yet to come, that they should be brave for their ancestors. And as is the urging of the last urging of the African American Male Advisory Council, when they revisited their mission and vision, that their statement to their Black students is that you are the architect of your own dreams. And so congratulations to all of you. We live in very challenging times, but you are our future leaders, and we look forward to seeing what change you bring. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Hampson. Any other comments from directors before we move to executive session? Okay, hearing none. This is similar to our executive session at the top of the agenda. Please switch over to the other Teams meeting link that you should have in the Teams app or software. So the board is now immediately recessing the regular board meeting into executive session to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency per RCW 42.30.1101I, with the session scheduled for 30 minutes with an anticipated end time of 4:14. Directors will be leaving this remote meeting now for the duration of the executive session, and I will return to this meeting to make announcements should we run past our scheduled end time, and also to adjourn the regular board meeting at the conclusion of the executive session. Directors, you have been provided separate call-in and Teams meeting information for this executive session. Please now leave this Teams meeting and join me in that separate remote meeting for the executive session. Thank you all for your patience, and I will see you in the executive session.
Martina, does